This is the anterior aspect of the brainstem and part of the basal ganglia of the brain. The brainstem consists of the medulla. This is the medulla, the pons, and the midbrain. The medulla anteriorly is divided by an anterior median fissure that is continuous with that of the spinal cord, going by the same name. Lateral to the anterior median fissure on either side is the pyramid. At the lower part of the medulla, the pyramids will decussate, so the fibers go contralaterally. Lateral to the pyramid, there is the olive. Here there is this orange projection. Between the olive and the pyramid, there is origin of the rootlets of the hypoglossal nerve. Lateral to the olive and posterior to it, there is the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So we can say between the olive and the inferior cerebellar peduncle, there are the origins of the glossopharyngeal nerve, below it the vagus nerve, and below it on the other side, it's much more obvious. Here is the origin of the cranial root of the accessory nerve. This is the cranial root of the accessory nerve. Also on the other side, but it's not very obvious. It's this one, yes. This is the cranial root of the accessory nerve. Posteriorly, it has a posterior median sulcus. On either side of it, there is the gracile tubercle, and the nucleus, and it is formed, it's underlined by the gracile nucleus. So below it, there is the gracile nucleus, and the structure we see here is the gracile tubercle. Then lateral to it, there is the cuneate tubercle, formed by the underlying cuneate nucleus, and lateral to it, there is the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve. And as we mentioned, this is the inferior cerebellar peduncle for connection with the cerebellum. Then we go higher up and we have the pons. This is the anterior aspect of the pons. Anteriorly, it has a basilar groove for the basilar artery. Laterally, it has the origin of the trigeminal nerve. The smaller one is the motor root. The larger, you can say the smaller, more lateral or more medial one is the motor root, and the larger, more lateral one is the sensory root of the trigeminal nerve. Between the pons and the medulla, we see origins of three cranial nerves. From medial to lateral, this is the abducens nerve. Then the facial nerve, the smaller one, and then there is the vestibulocochlear nerve. On the posterior aspect of the pons, we see the middle cerebellar peduncles. Of course, the posterior aspect has been removed. It has quite many features, but we cannot see them here. And of course, the posterior aspect of the medulla forms the lower part of the floor of the fourth ventricle, and the posterior aspect of the pons forms the upper part of the floor of the fourth ventricle. And above the middle cerebellar peduncle, this is part of the brainstem, the superior cerebellar peduncle. So now we have the brainstem. If we take a medial look at it, it is this part is the midbrain. This is the pons. This is the medulla. The midbrain is traversed by the cerebral aqueduct. It's part of the ventricular system, connecting the third ventricle with the fourth. Behind the cerebral aqueduct, the midbrain. This part of the midbrain is called the tectum. And the tectum on each side has two colliculi, a superior and an inferior. So on both sides, there are four colliculi. If we collect the colliculi of both sides, we have four. Each colliculus is connected by a brachium. The superior colliculus is connected by the superior brachium to the lateral geniculate body. So this is concerned with visual reflexes because this is the half of the optic chiasm, This is the optic tract. This is the lateral geniculate body, and it's also connected to the superior colliculus through the superior brachium. Below it we have the inferior colliculus. It is connected by the inferior brachium to the medial geniculate body. It lies medial to the lateral geniculate body, and both these geniculate bodies are nuclei of the thalamus. This one, and it's part of the auditory system, the medial geniculate body. Okay, so also on the posterior aspect of the midbrain, below the inferior colliculus, there is the origin of the trochlear nerve. In reality, the trochlear nerves will cross each other, so the one of this side goes to the other side. But here it just goes straight to the front. The anterior aspect of the midbrain is generally, or let's say the whole of it, is called the cerebral peduncle. The cerebral peduncle, all of it is the cerebral peduncle. It is divided, we have to take an internal look at it, here by the substantia nigra, to a posterior part, the tegmentum, and an anterior part, the cerebral crus. So all of it is the cerebral peduncle. And we can say the anterior aspect of it is the cerebral crus. Okay? Now I will have to get the other side as well. Okay. So between the two cerebral peduncles, we have the interpeduncular fossa. So generally, the area between them, this part is called the interpeduncular fossa. Medial to each cerebral crus is the origin of the oculomotor nerve. Okay. Of course, we see many other features here, but they are generally considered to be parts of the hypothalamus. So we'll have to go to the diencephalon now. All right. This is the thalamus. It's part of the forebrain, the diencephalon. The two thalami in many people are connected by the interthalamic adhesion. It is not nerve fibers, just connection. Below the thalamus, there is the hypothalamic sulcus. Behind it, there is the pineal gland, or body. In front of it, there are the structures of the hypothalamus. This area is generally the hypothalamus. So if you get the other half again. All right. Here, the stalk of the pituitary has been removed, but it's generally here, located here. The stalk of the pituitary gland, or the infundibulum. Below it, we have the tuber cinereum. This area is the tuber cinereum. Below it are these two green projections here. They're not in real life green. They are the mammillary bodies. The area below them, which we said generally is called the interpeduncular fossa, is perforated by blood vessels. So it's called the posterior perforated substance. The anterior one is here. This one is posterior to this one relatively. So this is the posterior perforated substance. Another part of the thalamus that is visible posteriorly is the pulvinar. This is the pulvinar. And that's it.